We had a good run.
Oh my god, it's wonderful.
Literally never done a pyramid scheme.
You got to nearly the top of the pyramid scheme.
Guys,
I
can someone
actually-
pass me that red?
That's mine.
Useless. Oh wait.
No, that's mine.
No.
Glenn just took
Functional
it.
glass.
No, Stephen, that's mine. Stephen, have that glass? Yeah. Also, can I get the...
Red.
Oh,
Good.
the next one?
I wish to call this house to order and vote on the
I'll take the resolution.
realistically last couple of meetings of
The last public business meeting was held on the 22nd of March with the female criteria. It was the final of the finals competition, named as the first female member of the FIS who left being a fault to the economy. This week is the final hurrah for a lot of people as we let the old throne of the dispatch box as irrelevancy finally fades to nothing. John Kenneth Kilbrough famously said that under capitalism, man screws man, whereas under socialism, it's exactly the other way around. And that sounds gay enough for a system. The MacBook Marxists will try to hide their hypocrisy behind misremembered political philosophy. Team Sensible will try to find their disgusted poor people behind funding noise. Ironically, I'm remembered of one of my very first memories of the Hist. Oscar, known to all of you probably, had stolen D. Courtney's wine, and she tried to rebuke him, saying, "You're a libertarian, you're supposed to believe in private property." And he turned to her and said, "You're a communist, you're supposed to not mind stealing." Nominations for committee closed today. For our last debate, for the first time, a session where we broke more debaters than we did glassware. For the last time, the MCs left clean up to the very last second, and I left minutes to the very last minute. It's been an honour to make bad jokes for you this year, and I look forward to watching someone else bomb the entire chamber. There being no further business, the meeting adjourned.
Are there any objections?
Yes, I
Approve an accurate account of the last public meeting. No objection. I should now like to call upon the auditor to introduce the invited guests.
So our chair this evening is Anton Murphy, who is a fellow Emeritus and an associate professor in economics at Trinity College Dublin. We have no other guests, as this is our tax debate. So the majority of the speakers you see before you are leaving this year. Many of them it will be their final speech in the chamber, because to be honest, we're probably never going to invite them back. So just the format of the debate tonight is similar to all our other debates. That is that speeches are 7 minutes in length. There'll be a bell at the first minute, at the 6 minute, and a double bell at the 7 minute. So the first and last minute of each speech is protected time. But during the middle of 5 minutes, anyone from the floor, that's all of you guys, can stand up and say something along the lines of a point of information on that point, and if the speaker accepts you, then you can ask them a point of information. So those are generally best phrased in the form of a question, and please do keep those for about 15 seconds or less. And if the speaker rejects you, which I can do by just kind of waving you down, then please don't offer another one for about 20 to 30 seconds. Now, I'd also point you to the oratory returns, which you'll find on your chairs. The last time we're going to have to do it this year, I would please encourage you all to fill those out. There's details inside and how you fill those out. We use these at the end of the year, so in a few weeks' time, to decide on the best speakers during the year and award prizes for them. So they are very, very important to our speakers, especially our speakers tonight, for whom this will be, for many of them, their last chance to win any sort of award for the test. The last thing I would say then is that we'll be doing floor speeches after the debate. So these are short speeches, about 4 minutes in length. And anyone on the floor as well can give a floor speech. If you'd like to give a floor speech, then please write your name down on a piece of paper and the side of the debate that you'd like to speak on. And have myself at One more
Marks,
week without breaking.
congratulations.
This is where
Yeah, so
You're doing the professional.
yeah, okay, so that's pretty much it. So I'm going to hand you back over to our chair now. We're going to start the break properly.
The question before the House this evening is, this House supports socialism. And I'd now like to call on Ollie Donnelly to propose the motion to the House.
Ollie, as this is your final speech in the chamber, you're entitled to Crone's rights. Should you accept those known from the floor, it cannot be a point of information, but should you reject those, we'll give you a rousing round of applause. What would you choose?
I will waive them rights. Comrades, a spectre is haunting the GMB. It is the spectre of poorly applied neoliberalism. It is Ed Burke's screaming ghost, doomed to be echoed through conservatism and badly applied economics forever in this chamber, through the halls of Reddit and forced through holes in neckbeards beneath fedoras, and to turn everything that comes from it into a poisoned discourse, one that does not prioritize equality, but instead believes that we should all stand equally despite having different heights. We want to bury this ghost tonight. We want to make him turn in his grave one final time, and we want to support socialism. What is this debate not about? We do not have to defend atrocities done in the false name of socialism. We do not have to defend Stalin. We do not have to defend Mao. We are not all tankies. Sinead is a tanky. The rest of us are not tankies. We believe that these are not true socialism, and we believe that any ideology that would prioritise the few over the many abandons the principles that we stand behind and therefore do not have to stand behind it. We secondly believe that if they want to make this debate about this, they have to recognise that people like Pinochet did the same things, the same horrible things in the name of capitalism. And we don't want to have that discussion tonight. We'd rather talk in principle. And finally, we say that if that is what this is, if this is a boring game of example tennis, made through one rather than the other shitty ideology, then this will be a very boring debate. So what do we want to say? We want to say that we can no longer support capitalism. Why do I say no longer? Because we recognise that history is complex. We believe capitalism was something good at a time. We believe that it was better than the system of monarchy. We believe that it is better to have a class of privileged people rather than one privileged person, one privileged family. But we believe that we are not at the end of history. We think that we can move forward, and we think that we should move forward. We think there are many reasons to critique the capitalist system as it exists now. The system that allows for misery for many, for poverty for many. We think that if growth is the thing that is important, rather than the divine right of kings, it is still a goal that is not humanity, a goal that is not intrinsically about happiness. And that's what we want, that's what we support. We support happiness through equality. And we believe that we can do better. Why do we criticise capitalism? We say that it values individuals based on how they can be turned into a monetary value. We think this is intrinsically bad. Why? Firstly, because we think people have deeper value. We think people have deeper meaning to their lives, and we think people should. We think it is right for you to be allowed to choose something cultural or some kind of deeper meaning to your life, whether that be your religion, whether that be art, whether that be being like someone that wants to act on behalf of your family. We think all of that is reduced down to a financial sphere, where all we value in art is whether it is able to be sold for money, where we only value someone's work for a family if that is the hard labour done day to day. We say that valuing people based on their monetary worth intersects with all of the other discriminations within our society. To tell women, because they are valued less by society due to sexism, that they are worth 77% of what a man is worth, rather than being worth the same thing, and rather than tackling that. We say that when racism manifests itself in this way, the same thing happens, where you're paid less and worth less in monetary terms because of the colour of your skin. That is morally wrong. That is not something we can stand behind. Go.
So, why are you comparing being paid less to being thrown in gulag to being on the wrong race?
Okay, like the gulag thing is what my long and overly flamboyant introduction tried to spin this debate around from. So, like, if you want to like back fascism, then grand, Kevin. Well, actually, no, he would. Yeah, not the debate, right? We think that capitalism tells people to lift themselves up by their bootstraps. It tells people that they should make themselves worth more and invest in themselves in order to have a better life. We say that this would be fine if we all had bootstraps, but notice that some of us don't. Notice that some of us don't even have boots. Notice that it's hard to pull yourself up by the bootstraps when you're walking in your bare feet on the burning ground. And we say that it is the poor, that it is the impoverished in this world that are left to suffer in that. So what is our alternative? We believe that you should start from equality. We believe that human dignity is the first thing that we should consider in any human being. That the only thing that should matter in our valuation of ourselves is that we are human. Based on this, we think it is all right to tax the wealthy, to make them pay for the privilege they have, not because they have done something wrong, but because other people should benefit from that as well. Because other people should benefit from everything that exists for humanity. So no one has to go hungry at night. So no one has to work a menial job for hours and hours at the minimum wage just to get by, just to survive, rather than living, rather than having a meaningful life, a life that is lived for themselves rather than for others, rolling burritos on a 12-hour shift. We say that if this is a less efficient economy, as we believe that they will say, you're out of time, Jack. You're out of time for the last time. We say that some things are worth more than money. Culture, leisure, family, and the ability to define your own life. We are richer when none of us are rich. We are less poor when none of us are poor. We want to debate forever. We want to stay here and live the best years of our life in every year. To live a life that is in each moment meaningful, rather than getting a job and working 9 to 5 after the best years of our life pass us by. So for the last time, ladies and gentlemen, proud to propose.
To oppose the motion, Oscar Fu.
Oscar, to be honest, I thought last year would be your last time speaking.
So did I.
Here we are. If you promise you're never going to come back again, I'll entitle you to Crohn's rights. Same as always, should you choose to accept them, no from the floor cannot be your point. Should you choose to reject them, we'll give you a round of applause. Which would you like?
I suppose I will waive my Crohn's rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do something which I have failed to do over my last 6 years at this college. And that is to convince you once and for all that socialism is a debunked philosophy and we should not be talking about it anymore. But I've been trying to do this for 6 years, and for some reason we keep having this debate. We change the wording depending on who's on committee that year, whether or not it's this house supports socialism, duh, or this house regrets socialism, because obviously it's evil. The fact is, we need to decide once and for all what we're going to do. And this is going to be the speech to do it. This is going to be the speech that once and for all buries this thing. And with that in mind, I want to talk about some rebuttal that I have for Ollie, which I labelled Ollie's memes because that's all I could come up with in the time period allotted to me. And because I wasn't allowed to tell the joke I actually had. Anyway, Ollie gave us this version of socialism that is sunshine and rainbows, where everybody gets everything that they want that is equitable and wonderful, and then tries in turn and then tells us that, you know, we're not going to talk about the gulags, we're not going to talk about everything like that, and at the same time insists that we on the right must accept everything that has potentially gone wrong with capitalism. Things like, you know, the fact that we're a bit racist sometimes, or maybe don't give, you know, women everything that, you know, they deserve on an equitable playing field. But the fact is, the capitalist system that we have has provided far more for us than this. The fact is, he talks about the poor, you know, being impoverished and how that's terrible. But the lives of the poor within our society today are far better off than they were 100 years ago. Why is that? Because of capitalism. No, thank you. If we look at the fact that, you know, he talks deeply about how everyone should not be forced to work under the yoke and chain of some oppressor. Like, the horrible reality is, that's life. Most of us have to do that. At least with capitalism, some of us, if we are willing to take the risk, have the choice and the chance to say, you know what, I'm going to set up my small business. If I fail, I'm going to lose everything and perhaps be screwed in my perfect utopia. But I think that in a libertarian idea, we're going to do it. So, let's give Ollie his best case scenario, and let's not talk about communism and socialism. Let's talk about Bernie Sanders and his lies to the American people. Because you know what? I've given this speech 1,000,000 times, and at this point, the only thing I can think to do is to give points I've never given before. So with that, I move on to the biblical case for capitalism. Socialism violates 3 of the 10 commandments. It puts state before God. Thou shalt not steal, and to covet thy neighbour's goods. If we were to have a system where people could vote together and decide, okay, let's all get in a group and vote together and decide, let's steal that guy's stuff, right? That would be a terrible system for government, and everyone here in this room would laugh. But for some reason, we decide that, as a collective, this is the best possible, you know, solution for the thing. And when we point out that, you know, maybe it's not morally correct to steal from people, people are like, well, look, we're trying to redistribute it, and obviously the government is the best possible way to do this. Well, we're told we need more government all the time. Yeah, go on, Ollie. Why?
Okay, the entitlement to property is something that is fundamentally unfair because it specifically prioritizes people who are born with more access to the ability to accumulate further property. We want to create equality based on human dignity.
So what he has done is stood up there and say, property is evil. We shouldn't have no more property. Look, I will concede on this side of the house. Socialism will work if you want 15 people to live in a commune together and maybe they get on all right. Any more than that and you have a problem. Because inevitably, someone rises to the top. Someone attempts to take power, and effectively you end up being ruled by the person with the largest gun, the biggest stick. In the case of like most countries at this point, it's the state. We have a state which ultimately rules over us, which can take our money, which can take our property, and which can take, you know, everything that we want to give. No, thank you, Jack. Right. I think that the fact is that capitalism as a concept is forced altruism. It forces you to, at the end of the day, provide a service for someone else or you starve. If you do not do someone else some good, then you do not eat tonight. That is the central thesis and promise of capitalism. There are flaws and there are problems. But in the same way as he wants us to stand up and defend every single capitalist thing, in the same way as he won't let us defend every single thing, I would rather stand over 99% of Western liberal democracies than I would over all of the socialist countries that we've ever tried, ever. But you know what? This isn't going to get us anywhere, because you know what? You guys don't want me to do this. You guys have seen me here before 1,000,000 times, and you want me to tell his anecdotes. Well, to be honest, I don't really have any anecdotes, because I'm old. So all I can do is talk about the time that, you know, remember that time I ordered those terrible sandwiches for Lorcan? Remember that time Andrew said that terrible thing about Sophie? Remember that time we had Dan Cush? Remember the time Siobhan dumped me at the AGM? Remember the time that scabies was a thing? Remember when Kevin's son was the worst speech you'd heard in this chamber? Remember when everything was washed with Lorcan's dish towel? I can go on. But these are all nostalgic comments for you, because that's what you want from me, because that's all I'm good for anymore. I have given this speech 100 times, and all you want from me at this point is bizarre nostalgic comments and occasionally vaguely threatening conservatism about how white men should be in power. And that's it. That's what this society demands from me at this point. And you know what? I'm going to give them what they want, because I used to have dreams. I used to have hopes. I came to this society, you know. Okay, sorry, yeah. Yeah, I now have a list of useless hiss procedures and anecdotes from this building, which become completely irrelevant in about a week's time. So all I can do for now is I can impress upon you the fact that, look, if you have reached 18, 20 odd years of your life, and you have not thought, you know, maybe it's better that we live in a society where I'm free to buy what I like. Maybe that I live in a society, you know, where people produce goods and I can choose which goods and services I avail of and which goods and services I don't like. Maybe that's possibly better than the alternative, where everyone has the same razor blades and no one has iPods. Ladies and gentlemen, because iPods are cool, and slavery is also cool in China where we make the iPods, I don't know. Let's go out in the high. Ladies and gentlemen, they gave me a silver medal. They can't take that away now. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to
It's going to be presented now by Julie Davis.
I'm going to say three things now. Firstly, I'd ask people refrain from throwing things at our speakers, wherever they are. Second of all, I'd like to remind everyone that we're doing floor speeches at the end of the break, so if you'd like to do a floor speech, please write your name down on a piece of paper, as well as the side of the debate that you'd like to speak on, whether that's proposition or opposition, and that piece of paper to myself. And thirdly, Julie, this is your second time speaking in the chamber, but you were denied maidens' rights. Very unfortunate for your first time, so I'm willing to extend those to you again. You know the drill. Would you like to accept them?
I'd like to waive them, please.
We love you, Julie.
Mr. Speaker, as Reagan once said, socialism only works in two places: heaven where they don't need it, and hell where they already have it. I might not be a hack, and I might not have those hilarious anecdotes that everyone else has, but listen, judging by the low amount of applause, nobody else really wanted them either. So I'm going to give you a proper speech, because I didn't realise what a mess this was when I signed up. I'm going to tell you why we shouldn't support socialism for two reasons. One, because it forces individuals into poverty, thereby denying them the rights to their independence and free choice. And secondly, how it robs them of their civil liberties. But first of all, rebuttal. Ollie says we don't have to defend fake socialism. Let's forget the examples. They're not what matters in this debate. And of course, it's relevant, it's convenient for him to say that because, you know, like, history hasn't been kind to socialism. You know, like, history might be complex, as Ollie says, but the history of socialism just isn't. Like, in the 7 countries in the modern day, in at least the 12 in the last century, and in the 2 or 3 that were happening in the 19th century, people have suffered and they have died for the fake examples and excuses of promises of equality that socialism has failed to provide them. It is obvious at this point that what they are not fake socialism. They're just the accurate honesty of socialism that the prop doesn't want to admit. Sinead then tells us that it's wrong that women are trapped in a cruel capitalist society whereby women can't afford sanitary pads and they're trapped in sexualization. I say, like, it's unclear why this doesn't happen under socialism. Like, it's unclear why the women in Venezuela who struggle under desperate poverty, who don't have any access to this stuff, are comparatively better. Like, there has to be a comparative here. Even if capitalism is kind of bad, like, it is unclear why socialism is not infinitely worse. Right. Why socialism robs individuals. Yeah, I'll take it now, Mark.
What are your thoughts on open freedom?
Good crack. 10 out of 10 would recommend to a friend. So we think freedom is good. We think it's a pretty fundamental right, okay? Like, without it, like, everything means nothing. That's why, like, when Ollie says that people have a right to, to have a deeper meaning, to explore art. Like, that doesn't mean jack shit at the point at which I'm so impoverished and so miserable that I have no agency or free will. And the defining characteristic of socialism is that it takes away individual rights and it gives it directly to the state. And this idea that capitalism props up this dog eats dog world is just like not exclusive to capitalism. Because the desire for man to gain material benefits over everyone else is not exclusive. It's a fundamental right of human nature. We can trace it through communism, through capitalism, and through feudalism. But what is unique about capitalism is that it uses this trait for a socially useful end. Under every other system, a group of individuals sit at the top and they prosper while everyone else suffers. This happens in places like Cuba, it happens in places like Venezuela that they don't want to admit, okay? Uniquely under capitalism is a system whereby I as an individual can satisfy this material ambition, but also by serving so in a socially productive manner. Everybody gains under capitalism in a way that it doesn't happen. I can gain money while providing benefits, by providing goods to somebody else. This is why socialist countries are not only less wealthy, but they're also less free. This is why there's a difference between East and West Germany. That's why there's a difference between North and South Korea, okay? Because elites sit at the top and they suffer, and everybody else suffers under socialism, whereby in capitalism, at least people share, okay? Socialism also goes much further than this. It doesn't just make you less free at the point at which it restricts your capacity to gain material goods, but the system is constructed in a way that takes away your fundamental civil liberties, okay? It has to be totalitarian. They have to admit that. They have to stand over it. You can't just shirk over. Now, I've already taken Mark. I'm probably not going to take anyone else. Okay, you have to accept that. Jobs have to be prescribed under socialism. Money has to be taken away from individuals and redistributed. Businesses are kept under surveillance, guys. Come on, the state controls everything, just the distribution of power in a way that there is no way to check this. Marx even argued that this was what happens, and he admitted it. He said, it is fine, though, because as society tends towards being more liberal, you can take these constraints away. But this, as the story of Karl Marx's life, he got this wrong. He got everything wrong in his entire life, okay? Because, in every state that has tried socialism, this has not happened. In Venezuela, where people live under desperate poverty, where they can't even afford to export oil, their natural resource, people are trapped in this oppressive state. In Cuba, where elites crush opposition and they crush individuals' right to freedom of speech, people generally struggle, okay? We say that if your basic fundamental right to freedom is not kept, nothing that Ollie tells you about your deeper meaning means jack shit, okay? This is how the hierarchy works. You gotta have the bottom before you start going to the top, okay? But also, the massive programs that socialism pushes, they force a huge cost on the individual that's just grossly unfair. Recognize that Bernie Sanders' healthcare plans, his university plans that he had, saw huge taxes to middle-class individuals that trapped them in massive debt and stretched them to limits that were just grossly unfair. And there is a comparative here, okay? Because not only does capitalism offer individual freedom, but it is proven to offer people actually monetary benefits. Ollie is again sorry, I hate to keep wrecking at you. I'll take you in a sec, Oshin. Ollie is wrong to claim that capitalism is what holds up poverty, what holds up racism and such. Because in the past 25 years, by which we've actually embraced free market thoughts, okay, 1 billion people have been lifted out of poverty, okay? That just doesn't happen under their side. The global poverty is decreased by 37% to 10%. Oshi. By which the state has a ridiculous amount of power, by which you see large taxes, by which you see the decrease on individuals' rights and an increase on state rights. That's how I would define socialism. Okay. So when political elites with no checks and balances, which happens under socialism, which they want to get away with and pretend they're not going to discuss on prop. When this happens, they control capital, and instead of letting the market decide who gets this distribution, they always, as it's been proven in history, pool it for themselves, because there's no reason for them not to. And the taxes and the freedoms that the individual has given up under socialism means that they grab back at this. And the state, which is often the traditional groups that they want stopped, like classically like patriarchal structures like men and religious minorities, they are who reign under socialism. Okay, thanks to capitalism, rates increase, infant mortality decreases, opportunities for women get better, which you don't see in Cuba and Venezuela. Like systems like the global banking system, which is the bedrock of capitalism, is the most diverse industry that happens only under capitalism. Like for these reasons, it is clear that socialism is just crap. It's just rubbish. It denies individuals their basic rights. It denies us access as a society, and for those reasons, I'm incredibly proud to oppose.
Peter, this is your final speech for number 2. You are also would you like to accept them or waive them?
I can't quite believe it's my last one. I think I'll wait.
God is a god.
Cheers. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the College Historical Society, this is my last ever speech in this chamber, and I'm so glad that it got to be on a topic that I care about and believe in so deeply and passionately that until about midday yesterday, I was signed up to speak for the other side of the House. However, this speech is still filled with things that I genuinely believe is broadly the same speech I would have given over there. How is that possible on such a contentious and divisive issue? So partly to explain that, partly because it's my last time here, and it's the kind of stuff I really, really love. Let's go really meta for a second. Like, how are you hearing any of this? No, seriously, think about it. Like, when a person says a series of things, right, like a series of sound waves emanates, and then a series of neurotransmitters is fired in your brain to create the controlled hallucination that is the reality you perceive, that each of us individually perceives. What's really interesting about that is that the structure of each person's mind, like the specific wiring patterns, a number of cell receptors, receptors of specific neurotransmitters, is different in each person's brain, which means that the perception that you have of reality is, like on a fundamental biological level, subjective. That each person experiences life in a different way because there is like literally a different structure causing you to experience that thing, right? And part of that comes down to I have to bring up my course here. Like I do genetics, so I really like forcing that into even this debate. No, not you. You know stuff. Okay, so look, some people will agree with what I'm saying in the speech, and that activates pathways that enhance a sense of community and belonging and cause you to overlook like gaps in the logic of my argument. And some of you will disagree, which triggers a series of pathways that allow like more deep, focused thoughts so that you see the flaws in your opponent's arguments, right? The fact that your genotype ultimately it doesn't entirely determine your viewpoints and like how you emotionally react to things, because like your environment you grow up in and your free will does also have an influence, but it has a major effect, right? And like a lot of how your politics develop and how you look at the world and what you believe, ultimately is heavily influenced by that. I'll take Katrina whenever I've finished explaining this. The reason why all this is relevant, right, is that a lot of the capitalism and socialism debate comes down to axioms. Like, what is human nature? Like, everyone on both sides is going to claim, like, why do people do work? What inspires us? What causes us to believe something is worth doing? Like, do we do things for the good of our community? Do we do things for praise? Do we do things for monetary gain? Like what ultimately is the reason? Is the best way of organising our economy to get the best out of people? What ultimately matters more, like rewarding the greatest in our society or defending the weakest? And that's something that I think, on a fundamental level, we're never going to agree on. I'll take Katrina.
Okay, so that perception of the world of human language is being used as a tool of oppression in capital structures for centuries. Does this not agree with the socialism?
Katrina, I'm on the socialism side of the debate. So that was a really Look, what I'm doing there is framing the world that you live in, which is a world in which inevitably people are going to disagree on things, because on a really fundamental level, you'll probably never convince a lot of people of the things that you see as axiomatic to how the world works. Like the beliefs that you have about the world, ultimately are things that you can, to a large extent, never convince people of. And because of how evolution works, because of how variation is reintroduced into people's. No, again, I'm not taking you because you know things. Because of how because of how that variation is always reintroduced, it's there's always going to be a vast society full of people who are fundamentally different. So how do you build a society to accommodate those differences, to create the best possible economy that you can, and have the best possible world that you can despite that? I'm going to say that given that he died 100 years before any modern technology is relevant, I care about as much of what Karl Marx thinks of like our economic policy as what like Queen Victoria thinks about our economic policy. Like it's interesting, but also irrelevant. However, he hit on a few decent ideas. I'm going to go through what those are. I also want to point out like it's really arbitrary what the cutoff point between socialism and capitalism actually is. As with much human interaction, I think that loads of it is essentially just just like stupid tribalism. Like, and as Ollie pointed out, like look, every ideology that's been taken seriously by people has probably led to some really bad things. I don't think playing example tennis with that is particularly productive. However, I'm going to defend my thing. My thing being heavy taxation on the rich, very good social safety nets, and well-funded education and healthcare. And say like because there's heavy taxes on the rich, like we're going to be giving loads to poor people. That is socialism. However, you will still get like a reward for being better. It will be like the exact reward determined by the market. Some of that will be taken off. No, thank you. I will point out, like when they talk about people rising out of poverty, I would ask everyone to consider that this is because of, like, nearly because of the like massive technological innovations that are taking place over the past 100 years, like the massive rises in innovation, and those like comes down to scientific discovery as opposed to specifically like the exact reward determined by capitalism. Also, that like I think our aim should be to have there remain rewards, have there like remain benefits to being like higher in society, while not necessarily saying that those need to be the ones determined by the market. I point out that capitalism is great at producing things, but it's terrible at distribution. Like there's huge amounts of waste and inequality. We've nearly run out of jobs. The horror stories that I'll tell you are like specific places where socialism has gone the absolute worst it possibly could have. And those places with socialized medicine, loads of places with welfare states, things have gone fine. I'm going to defend those things, saying those things should be expanded. Okay. In terms of those, like why I think it's a good idea to have that heavy taxation, but also like good safety net, good education, and healthcare. Look, going back to things I said earlier about different values and axioms. Like some people are willing to work for the good of the community. Some people are willing to work for social acclaim, for example, Sinead. Some people, but some people aren't. Some people demand monetary reward. However, I am unclear why that specifically needs to be the exact amount determined by the market. I don't see why just getting more than other people isn't like a relative reward anyway. I have no idea, and nobody has ever explained to me why the exact amount determined by like this god of the free market is better than just like having more stuff, especially given that prices are probably determined by like what the richest people have. So I want to be clear, like rich people will be getting that stuff, but also I'm fine saying if you get more stuff, that's still a reward and it still incentivizes people to do more stuff. Yeah, sure, go.
What's your opinion of the iPhone's development on the effects of that's had on sub-Saharan African banking industries?
I think people would have invented the iPhone anyway under my system because they would have been rewarded for it. Also because given that they're saying like things like there'll be socialized healthcare and education. First of all, healthcare means that more people will like stay alive for longer, which means they have more time to develop and invent stuff. Also, the education means people who would have been trapped in poverty, like really smart people who are currently like trapped in poverty, can't get out of it, never get a chance to invent the iPhone, now get that kind of education, now get better. Because of that, they have more of a chance to do those kind of things. We say also safety nets are good for business because they allow people to take risks, which is great for business innovation. Like the more people who do those kind of things, the more chance you get for someone who is going to invent a thing like the iPhone. We say I probably get more of those. My idea. Lastly, then I want to talk about so even if we continue to live in a capitalist world, right? I'm still going to say what I'm going to call my free speech argument. That I think I support the existence of a socialist bloc, right? A socialist bloc that makes a socialist argument. Because I think it is important always to hear the best case for other views of the world throughout. Even if we continue to live in a capitalist society, I think it is important to have like a group of people who call us out when that capitalist society doesn't do as well as it could for the poor. That there's a socialist group, whatever they want to call themselves, who point out when capitalism does screw other people. Because even in the modern world, like they'll tell you, oh, well, nice stuff goes to the rich. Often nice stuff doesn't go anywhere. Often, half of the world's food, I think, it just goes to waste. Or loads of technology just goes to the dump rather than going anywhere. And that's clearly like a distribution problem. That's clearly something that could be given to those who are poorest in society. And it's clearly better on our side of the world when people are called to account for that. And when we have socialism, I'm very happy for the last time to propose. My favorite thing. Are we just there?
Firstly, again, this is another reminder about first speeches if you're interested in doing one. Write your name on a piece of paper and hand that to me. And secondly,
But can't you speak for running for committee just in case anyone suddenly being inspired to get on this train?
If this doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will.
The final speech for the hist. You know the drill. Will you accept or wait?
Much like my ego, and much like the Venezuelan government's attitude toward inflation, I also like inflation of my ego. Oh, actually, just one second. First of all, I'm going to take a selfie.
Oh my god, Dallas Jenner.
Okay. Now I'm going to actually turn on my timekeeping device. Give me a second.
Will you make it profile?
I might. Stopwatch. Go. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the College Historical Society, ladies and gentlemen. Socialism. Socialists. They'd rather the poor were poorer as long as the rich are less rich. And that's the last time I get to shoehorn that into a debate, and I'm actually kind of sad about that. So what am I going to talk to you about today? First of all, I'm going to try and provide a definition of socialism, which none of them have done. Then I'm going to go on and talk about price signaling, and then I'm just going to get downright vindictive and just have a go at these lot. So, I think that when you Google socialism, the idea of socialism is that the people or the community control the means of production, the means of dispersion, the means of giving away the goods, the means of everything. Shame. And yes, it's shameful. It doesn't make sense. The idea of socialism does away with things like prices, does away with things like money. No. Don't shake your head at me, Peter Gowan. The idea of a socialist republic is the idea that everyone gets equal things, the idea that everyone is equal. And honestly, the person who turns around and goes through med school, the person who goes through all of that effort deserves to be given more benefits, more than someone like Ollie who rolls burritos for a living.
Okay.
Ollie, when your speech involves the idea of burying ghosts and ghosts turning in his grave, it says a lot about your economic policies as well. They make about as much sense. So, what am I going to move on to? I'm going to talk about pricing. I'm going to talk about what happens when you try to impede on the market, what happens when you prevent the market working in the way it's meant to. Let's talk about something like price ceilings, something like rent ceilings, the idea of putting a cap on how much you can charge for rent. The problem is, as soon as you put that charge at a fixed amount, you prevent the price going up, obviously enough. That seems like a good idea if you're a renter. The problem is, as soon as you have more people looking to rent at that price than you have people looking to supply it at that price, there is no incentive for that person for other people to come into the market because they are currently not incentivized at that price. When the market is not regulated by the government incorrectly, the market is able to turn around and be like, well, as opposed to paying €600 a month, I would provide this house at €650 a month. I'd provide it at €700 a month. That is why you don't make rent ceilings. There's a well-known saying that is the faster way to destroy a city than fire bombings is to impose a rent ceiling on that city. No, thank you. That's the point of information you're looking for, buddy. So, what happens when you impose these sort of things? You get to a point where we have to ration everything. You get to a point where we spend all our time queuing. I'm not sure about you guys. I hate queuing. I hate sitting around. How do we avoid queuing under a capitalist system? We distinguish between who is willing to pay more for goods than others. This allows us to say, I want something, and I prefer this thing to other X thing that the government gives me under socialism, and I'm able to make an individual choice. Moving on to my next point, the individual versus the collective. Now, it sounds very nice being told what to do by the government the whole time.
On this.
No, thank you. It sounds really enjoyable to not have to do anything. I can, as Ollie has decided, spend my time studying the death.
So given birth, does it not mean that we're just queuing is something that you can avoid to actually be more in a really privileged situation that the vast majority of people aren't going in?
I mean, this is
Cheers.
I mean, if you insist. So, the thing about that is yeah, it sounds like a nice idea in theory. The problem is getting to it. The problem is socialist policies in the Western liberal democracy don't make sense. The transition will be hellishly painful for everyone because the entire economy is going to stop. So getting back into my original idea, let's go back to the individual. When we say that the government is able to make choices for you, we are inherently saying that individuals' choices do not matter, and that individuals' choices are less well equipped to say what matters to them. We say that is inherently bad. We say that some people prefer some things to others. And we say that a civil servant deciding what I have to do with my life is probably not the best thing, because in the current situation, civil servants don't really care because they don't get fired regardless. But anyway, it's even worse under socialism, because it's the same system. They don't really care because they're going to get given stuff anyway. So what's really in their interest to spend that time actually thinking out a coherent policy? We say that I would rather make my choices. I'd rather decide how I want to spend my money, what I want to get, than have my stuff rationed out to me in little booklets. We say that when someone makes a choice, as long as that choice is not directly harming other people, we don't think it is worthwhile preventing them from making that choice. No, Ollie, you can sit back down. When we have 10 farmers, or we can collectivize them into it, the collective farming thing, which didn't work, by the way, can still apply. Collective farming doesn't work, Meg. I'm sorry to break it to you and your little development mind. So, 10 farmers. Now, if one farmer makes an improvement to his farm and starts to do better with his farm, and one farmer is lazy and does not upkeep his farm, are we saying that it is better to take away from the farmer who made the effort to do something good to improve his livelihood and give it to the person who was lazy? Because apparently that's what we want when we want equality. Apparently that's what we're looking for. Over time, if you go back to a socialist system and you say, okay, you can't make improvements because we're going to take these improvements away, then you're just to prevent like a new form of capitalism, because either A, we rebalance everything at every generation, or B, we allow people after everything's redistributed to turn around and try and make their livelihoods better. I'm not sure where these guys want to fall on that side of the scale. What I will say is that is, problematic to say the least. For the record, as my final thing, the POI against Sinead was pre-arranged. She agreed to it. I am not a rampant sexist. Contrary to the elder hist's opinions. I will say this once, ladies and gentlemen. The day hist anarcho-communism died was a glorious day. Long live Team Sensible. Well, no, it sounds like socialism.
It is. Give me your phone.
Now to propose the motion.
Alright, firstly again, one final reminder about floor speeches. If you'd like to give one, I'm going to announce after we're going to speak. We'll be giving the floor speeches this evening, so please do write your name on a piece of paper. That's me if you'd like to give a short speech at the end. And secondly, Lorna, this is also your final speech in the chamber, so should you choose to accept your current rights and information, but should you choose to waive them, we'll give you a round of applause.
Do you know, I didn't take my maiden's rights. I'm going to waive these two. I think to begin with, Andrew broadly falls out of the debate because, to be honest, the difference is not between a doctor and Ollie getting paid the same, because that's not socialism, that's communism. Try again. The difference is that when, they will both have free healthcare, both have had free education, both have had the same access and ability to achieve what it is they want to do in their lives. And at that point, we will reward them based on what you're doing. So ta-ta, day-day. Now let's talk about Julie's points. Julie's points fall out of the debate. The point at which the problem she claims is that only one country is doing this. I don't think one country should be socialist. I think they all should be. She's right that when you exist in a capitalist structure and every other country is capitalist, your socialism falls down by your incapacity to compete. When you're all socialist, that doesn't exist, and therefore I don't care about that. Finally and thirdly, their big crux of why they think they should do. They equate freedom and independence as the absolute truth, the absolute importance. And to be honest, Trump used them a lot and they sound like nice words. The reality is, when you conceptualize them as all, you forget what they honestly mean. It might be nice for me to be utterly independent, utterly free, and function as I am. But if I had no support, no aid, my disability would have meant I never got here. I never got to stand on this podium. I never became who I was. The reality is, we are social herd animals. It has nothing to do with your independence or freedom, because your absolute thing that that conceptualizes your life, and what makes your life meaningful is how much you as a collective herd exist meaningfully. And I say socialism does that and capitalism never will, because when you think as an I and not a we, you are not truly human, you are not truly a person. Finally, Andrew's choice stuff, I tell you that not all of us have the same choice. It's like a ballot where one of us has 7 options and one of us has no ballot. That is why I stand over socialism. So let me level with you guys. I Googled socialism before this debate because I based my beliefs off whatever Stephen says is the opposite. But what turned out when I was Googling it was one of Stephen's crowning proofs that England was better than Ireland was the NHS. That was something he claimed as an evidence the UK was better than Ireland. What I will also tell you guys is the NHS is not a capitalist system. The NHS is an absolute definition of socialism, of the idea that the state should care for those within it. What I think the reality is the conceptualize, the problem is that it is very easy to criticize when you're within a system. When you live within a socialist system, it's very easy to criticize it. If the right of the 1940s and 50s they want to propagate saw us today, they'd say the socialists won. Guys, the reality is the things we take for granted in our lives, the maternity leave we are afforded, the cheap food we are funded for, the healthcare and education and things that we are provided for within our lives are not capitalist conceptions. They are socialist conceptions. When they say, look how well capitalism has done, they mean, look how much capitalism has improved people's lives when it adopted socialist policies. That's why they are wrong when they claim that capitalism has done so many goods. Do you want a demonstration of this? The US, a right-wing country, is having a debate over healthcare right now. Not whether you should give it or not, but which way we should give it. Because it has become a concept that the state should care for you in some metric. They should provide for you if you cannot provide for yourself. But how do we do this best? Trump care or Obamacare is now their question. You live in a state where socialism is winning and continue to win, and criticizing within it is easy because you have benefited from it. That is why they're comfortably. Like, we are here today because we benefit from CSE giving us money so we have cheap wine, which I assume why you're here, but also, more broadly, we benefit from the college giving education, funding and fees that have been afforded to those who cannot afford it, and for those of us who do, we try and push to have it cut further and further because we believe it is a right and we believe the state should provide for it. You live in a socialist state. That is why the contentions that they have problems are lies, because none of them have lived in a capitalist state. None of them even face it. And the criticism they have of capitalism, I would contend, are problems of it, not of socialism within it. So, what are the 2 problems with capitalism? 1, at its core, someone must be losing. 2, the notion that anyone can make it. Why is that important? Because understand the notion that someone must lose is true. Capitalism conceptualizes success based on merit. The only way you can have success is if someone else is losing. You cannot simply egalitarianly be succeeding within it. So you shouldn't always have. This means success, others must lose. The problem is that certain people always lose in capitalism. It's not just any random fate of the lazy people within it. So the benefits of capitalism they claim require someone to lose. They're right that iPhones are cheap, but it also involves slavery in other parts of the world to afford said benefits within it. You understand, like, to require to lose, you cannot, in a capitalism, someone must lose. I think that goes against our herds doing as well as possible, us as a people doing as well as possible. I do not think that is why you can allow capitalism to move. Second, the notion that anyone can win. That is a lie within it. The issue of benefit is true. You can make it, that anyone can make it. No, you can't. Not anyone can make it. It depends very much on who you are and what you were born with and everything in between. And they can choose choice examples from all of them. Guess why the examples are not just one of a mass or one of a crowd? Is because you can only do it. Secondly, the notion that anyone can make it. Judy conceptualizes success as like monetary gain. That is a conceptualization of capitalism because it means that you've metrically won over other people. The conceptualization that monetary independence is something you gain for is only important insofar as you believe that capitalism, correct, and capitalism is what you are going for. The lie to us all within this is the idea that your monetary success over others is what you should strive for. I would contend to find anyone on their deathbed who calls their banker to ask how they're doing. I would contend to find anyone who has actually had a life beyond that beyond these things they claim as benefit, that aren't in spite of capitalism, not for it, because ultimately it is for our group, not against our group, we strive for. That's why we love our family and friends. You're out of time, and not simply our bank accounts. Finally, I am going to end being sentimental because I'm a hack and I'm allowed. I'm going to tell you we're not at our best because a white straight man is our chair. We're not even at our best because we have a good committee. We are at our best. If that was true every year, it would vary. We are at our best when we as the HIST work together and actually try and do an extraordinary committee and council. The problem is we often fight and we often strive for power among ourselves. That is the capitalist way of belief of power, not the communist. I'm going to tell you we do our best when at Freshers Weeks, when we're desperate to get rid of that coconut water, we do. And we unite in our club. I'm going to tell you we are at our best when you incorporate the extraordinaries into equal members and look at Sinead's Burke panels if you want evidence of that. For myself, I am going to say we have been at our best when my MCs, when I was having a hard week, all banded immediately, didn't ask a question, were immediately there for me, and were always there for each other, without question, without fail. I'm going to say when the whole HIST was 100% behind my idea of harnies, behind what I wanted to do, and all message to praise me, that was proof of a group collective caring and working together at our best. I'm going to say that the HIST is at its best because it's provided me a place to be more happy, more confident, and more publicly spoken than I ever could have dreamed. The HIST is at our best when we work together to improve ourselves and to improve all that we're in it. We are a microcosm of what socialism can be. I am proud to propose.
Okay, well, my apologies for being a vice straight.
Oh, wow.
Before you begin, Stephen, I'm just going to announce the four speakers this evening, unless anyone else would like to put their hand forward. Okay. Guys, I'm not sure if you, which side or unfortunately not to move. Sorry.
Awkward.
But our four speeches this evening will be on proposition. We have Tain Sweeney and Usman bin Spooker, and on opposition we're going to have Nihal Gandhi. So those are our four speeches. So prepare yourselves, guys, and they'll be speaking after Stephen.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Auditor, ladies and gentlemen of the College Historical Society. First point of rebuttal. Lorna tells us we are better when the HIST works together. The HIST does not work together. The HIST works to dismantle the FIL and the FIO, which we have done before. The HIST does not operate as a collective anarcho-communism thing. What it operates as is a business that wants to take that €6 from those freshers each Freshers Week and leave as little €6 to him as we can. That is why the HIST succeeds. That is why the HIST pulls ourselves together from messes like Lorcan, etc. That is why the HIST succeeds. They want to talk about example tennis. You have come to the wrong tennis court to play that. Because they say socialism. Oh, we haven't tried it yet. Look, if you're a science student in Leaving Cert Science, and you have this hypothesis, right? And you test this experiment over and over again, and it fails every time. Look, you're not doing the experiment wrong, it's just your hypothesis is wrong. Suck it up, that's the reality of what your hypothesis is. That's the reality of socialism. Second of all, they want to talk about what socialism is in OVC's point of view, or a POI. I'll tell you what it is. It means if it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. Paul wants to talk about technology. Come on, Paul, that's our thing. It's our economic model. Every single economic model has the big A there, technology. That's what keeps things going. That's our models. You can't really get away with that. Fourth, they talk about the welfare state. Stephen, this is an offensive argument, right? I'm a Tory, right? When Lorna says, Stephen, your best British achievement is the NHS. No, I want to gut that. I want to bring it to the bare bones and leave the private market to provide people the service they actually desire, rather than a service that has proven itself failure time after time again after Labour government. Oh, sorry, I can't say Labour government after Labour government because they don't really happen anymore. Sorry. They want to talk about welfare states. They want to talk about Scandinavia. You know those big socialist countries that have companies like H&M that operate sweatshops in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, etc. You know that big capitalist backbone that powers the socialist agenda that they kind of promote. But Lawrence says, look, capitalism has adopted some of socialism. That's true, right? That's what you do to survive, right? You take the best of the other ideology and leave the worst. Unfortunately for socialism, it means the underlying structure of how the economy works is the part that left behind, and some of the auxiliary benefits of socialism are what capitalism takes, right? It doesn't have to be that we have to say we have to stand behind a capitalist utopia, right? Because that's what Ollie says, right? We have to stand behind utopia. No, what we have to stand behind is the world we currently live in the vast majority of the world, which is a kind of mixture of both societies, but predominantly capitalist. Is how we structure our economy, it's how we structure means of production, it's how we structure how we allocate resources. Seventh, they say that someone always loses. One, I point you to fractional reserve banking. The money supply keeps going, the pie keeps getting bigger, and there's more of that pie to allocate to everyone. I ask you a question, was there more money now than there was in the Neolithic? If the answer is yes, you're correct. If the answer is no, you're incorrect. Money supply has kept increasing. More money goes to more people all across the world. Julie says the poverty rate has been halved in the last 20 years. No response to that, because socialism strives on poverty. It strives upon people at the bottom of the barrel and manipulated them, saying they will have utopia, they will have Lenin's promised land, but surely now will stink of the most rank land that has ever been promised. No. 2 points in his speech. One, the road to serfdom. Second of all, capitalism and freedom. First of all, what is freedom? Because economic tools aren't just a means to an end, or aren't just a means, right? Or an means, right? They are an end in of themselves. It means you're able to control your entire life through controlling that economic system. It means you control what you value, you as an individual, and not you what the collective dictates. They want to talk about racism, homophobia, sexism. I tell you, it has never strived, racism, sexism, homophobia has never strived more than when a government tells you one. It has never been better for those people that you call minority groups to be better than they are under capitalism. Because in China, they learned in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, you can't oppress women because you'll never be economically competitive if you exclude half the workforce. That was capitalism telling them that they had to enable women to have stuff like capital and enhance their position in life. That meant that more people were able to hold money that was their own and able to improve their lives. Second of all, stuff like slavery, right? It was built on a foundation of slavery. The thing with slavery was, right, this is inherently a defensive argument, that when people were denied money, in slavery you worked because you were told to work, or unless someone sent guns to your house to kill you, right? Sounds a lot like taxation to me, right? Because if you don't pay your tax, someone with a gun will come and kill you because they can tell you how to spend your money better than you know how to spend your money yourself. That sounds a lot like socialism. Jack Kennedy says we should limit the individual's choice. He's libertarian. He's the reason why we should limit individual choice, but he's not the entire population, right? No. That's what socialism is. That's what it means to be socialist. Because someone else always has to be the planner of that economy. It's not the individuals that make choices and decide who values what for themselves, right? Second of all, who hates socialism? Pretty much everyone that lived under it, right? Eastern Europe, the UK Labour Party, Venezuela, where the government went round not more than a month ago and arrested people for selling brownies. No.
Were they wheat brownies?
No. And Cuba, and the great politicians that flee from Cuba to America, like, this is the last time I get to say his name, Marco Rubio.
Hear, hear!
These are the people that despise socialism. What all do they have in common? They have lived under it. Squid.
Okay, so you say you make the best parts from what you want ideology. Why don't we keep prices, get rid of dictatorial governments, and just give businesses to their workers and keep them in the market with stuff?
Because you haven't been able to do that yet, and I don't think you'll be able to do it in the future. It's not worked yet, and it hasn't worked any of the times we've done it before. Not sure what's going to change. Second point, capitalism and freedom. Because the thing with socialists is, they dream about having money to spend. Meanwhile, the conservatives are too busy making money and spending that money in the first place. We own the things that we own the thing that gives us power in this world, which is money, which in essence is our time. We are able to provide the basics for people. Like in places like India, where the socialist government has failed them time and time again. In places like Chennai, the electricity goes out every single night, aside from certain places. The government-run industries have failed consistently. It means in places like South Korea that we're able to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and actually improve their conditions, and we're able to go forward. Look, at the end of this debate, you need to consider what has improved the lives of people more. Because it's not enough to say that socialism might work. It's not enough to say that socialism in this hypothetical dreamland scenario will work. The reality of the world we live in is that capitalism has lifted millions upon millions of people, if not billions, out of poverty consistently, time and time after again. There is just simply too much to do and not enough time to do it. Look, for the last time, capitalism is the only way. We don't have enough time to sit around and hope something else works, because there's simply not enough time to do that. To say alternative means harm. When capitalism has proven time again, it can work. More than happy to stand in opposition.
I'd now like to call upon Attain Sweeney to give the first floor speech of the evening. Attain, this is your first time speaking in the chamber. Okay, and I've an Irish name as well.
Sorry, Ronaine, please. Impeach.
Your rights to maidens' rights, anyway, if you choose to accept them, no one from the floor can offer your point of information. If you choose to reject them, you get a raise your name for applause. Which would you like to choose?
I'll waive them, thank you. Okay, I'm going to level with you all. I have a bank of socialist jokes, and that alone is the sole inspiration behind the following. So, I want to start by informing you all that I am an expert on socialism, because you see, I study this module and it's called Introduction to Sociology. That means that everything I'm about to say is unequivocally right. In my expert opinion, I just think that socialism, it's really nice. Like, it's just really lovely to share. And I think that everyone should share things and hug and love each other and just be happy, okay? But not all socialists are lovely, and we need to remember that. So just because you paint pretty pictures of Germany, that doesn't make you a good person. Think of all the lovely socialists. Lenin. He was like Dev, except he had a beard, and he didn't screw over Irish sovereignty. Bernie Sanders. He's like Michael D on steroids. I like Bernie, I do. I like the name Bernie. Jeremy, that's another lovely name. Marx is like Santa Claus, another lovely socialist. Proof that socialists are all lovely.
Question.
Yeah, go on.
What's your opinion on Marx's book, The Jewish Problem?
Sorry, do I know you? Do you know me? Do you even come here anymore? Sorry, I don't think. Look, I'm gonna level with you, Stephen. I'm gonna level with you. You're not, just because you're classist, it doesn't mean you're classy. As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, TBH, Big Jim. I have an uncle called Jim, not a socialist, but wants Irish unity, so I like him. But now he's a bit of a silly Billy, to be honest, because you cannot have a 32-county republic without socialism, and I'm going to tell you why. Because in a republic, everyone is equal and loves and hugs each other, in theory. In capitalism, no one loves or hugs each other. That explains Stephen James Barr. And I think that's really sad. So look at all the great capitalists. Look at Luke Fettley over there. Just look at him. Living proof, if I ever saw it, that capitalists are incapable of love or hugs or realising the Irish Republican dream. And no matter how persistently you pursue the establishment of a capitalist state of Cork, it is simply not going to work. Primarily because no one in their right mind would ever dwell in Cork of their own accord. Actually, the only reason why people do live in Cork is because nowhere else will take them after they house that absurd fugitive, that utter sham, that absolute backstabbing snake, Dev. That's your fault. How do you live with yourselves on a daily basis is just beyond me. I mean, Cork should just support socialism out of a duty to repair the damage you've done. Like, I'm not going to explicitly condemn a primary education in Cork, but that's only because, to be honest, Dev's political career is condemnation enough. Anyway, Capitalist, Thatcher, uncannily like them. She's like Marie Antoinette with an accent from East England and a stronger distaste for happiness. Reagan, Stephen, you're on again. I mean, what even was that? What was that? Living in America under the Reagan administration was like living in a Barbie fun house, except most of the people living there weren't invited to Ken's pool party. James Connolly wouldn't allow that. James Connolly would invite everybody to the pool party. If James had a pool party, everybody would be invited. It would be L-I-T, lit. Just think of how unreal and off the charts James's pool party would be. There'd be mojitos, tequila, and an efficient healthcare system. Also, massive after-sex shown in Dublin Castle. So, to conclude, socialism equals massive sesh with a sassy Scotsman. Capitalism, love dies. Stephen James Barr, everybody.
I'd like to thank Jane, it's Han. That's big man. And I'm now let's go from Lee Hall Ganley. This is also your first speech in the chamber. You're also entitled to make these rights. Would you like to accept or waive them?
I'd like to waive them. Seriously, people, how could you think that the government is in any way capable of running our economy? Like, they manage to screw everything they touch up. When I was 11 years old, my brother, that little shit, decided to ambush me with a hurl and smash my face in and sent blood streaming down my body. I had to go into Galway Hospital, and what did they say? They said, "Ara, will you take a seat there? We'll send someone over to see you as soon as possible." 7 hours later, a doctor comes out to me and tells me that children have hard heads and that I'll be grand. Send me back home where I have to wait till to go to my local GP and get it stitched up. Ultimately, governments always fail because they do not have the capability to react to the market in real time. Our economy should encourage entrepreneurship. It should encourage innovation. It should encourage new ways of thinking. PayPal, Apple, you name it. Not yet, I only have 4 minutes. Are all results of competition and innovation. If we are to encourage further economic growth, we need people to aspire to greater things. The other ultimate evil of socialism is that it infringes on the dignity of the human being. It says, as it was noted, it violates the commandments of God himself. It violates our most sacred rights. I will take a point of information now. I love the poor. The poor are great, and I do believe in helping the poor. However, what socialism calls for is government controls of the means of production. And this, my friends, is not... No, I'm not going to take that point of information. This, my friends, is not acceptable. Ultimately, we must decide what society we want to live in. A society that's run by faceless bureaucrats, or a society where we choose our rights, where we choose what we want. Guys, no. Where we choose our own future. I believe in social justice. However, I believe in true social justice, where we take action into our own hands, where we help the poor. Of course, my friends, it's easier to step over a homeless person when they're begging on the street and not help them. But that is no excuse to point fingers and say, I'm going to take your money and give it to them to help them. It is your duty and your job as a person to help them, not the government's. And it is not, you have no right to steal someone else's goods to further that view. Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay, Stephen James Barr, who was correct earlier to point out that there was less money before the invention of money in the primordial age, often calls me an anarcho-fuckwit. Why would government control be compatible with my philosophy of anarcho-fuckwittism?
Why would it be what? I like socialism generally, how people. Anyway, I think I'll just move on from that point of information. Ultimately, if you truly believe in human equality, you have to oppose socialism. My grandfather was born in Krakow, and he had to flee Poland because of the impending Soviet tide that brought in a government which oppressed and took away human rights. Ultimately, I argue, all socialist governments will do this because they are bent on the ideal that it is morally okay to steal someone else's goods for your own purposes. This, my friends, is the ultimate evil. It is a government and a system which encourages, not only does it encourages evil acts to be carried out. As a result, I will ask you all to please oppose this motion. Is that what? Yeah, that is the side I'm arguing for. Yeah, thank you very much.
And I'd like to call upon our final speaker of the evening, Oisin Binstow. Oisin, as this is probably the final speech in
I imagine so.
I hope so too. You're in Crown's rights.
What are these rights?
Something you made up last year. Would you like to accept or waive them?
Or waive my rights? So this is my last speech after 5 years in this university, and I'm very happy to be able to get up yet again and have a nice little conversation about socialism. To be clear, I'm just going to kind of ignore a lot of the debate that happened because, to be completely honest, didn't really touch on a lot of the issues that A, I think are important, and B, that I personally am interested in. So instead I'm going to discuss the various things that I think are important when we talk about socialism and why we should support it. First and foremost, I asked Julie to give me a definition of socialism. She kind of mentioned various things about government and state and taxes, which really just sounded like a description of kind of the modern world and how most countries function, where you tax things and you have a government and a state. The dictionary definition of socialism, which again was kind of being vaguely referenced by a number of people, but not explicitly said so far in this debate, is when the means of production are owned and or regulated by the community. First off, what are the means of production? The means of production are essentially the economy, the elements of the economy, factories, places of work. Theoretically speaking, it can be expanded to, like a group of people working, doing coding, or a hospital. But it is, at its core, about the economy. In terms of it being owned or regulated by the community, this doesn't necessarily mean the government. The workers could own and run a factory. A local council or a local assembly of people could have a say in what happens in the economy in their local area. No thank you. At no point does the government have to be involved in socialism. The fundamental question of socialism is, do you believe that people should be in charge of the economy, or do you believe that capitalists should be in charge of the economy? Because the fundamental reality of capitalism is that it's run by capitalists. People with lots of money and people with lots of capital, like land and factories. They own them, they make the decisions, that's how it works. Versus socialism, where society or a social group of people get to make those decisions. Again, didn't really come up, so I'm just going to go on and tell you why I think that people getting to make decisions about their own lives and their own economy is probably a good thing. But first off, I will engage a little bit with some of the things that have been said because you can't really just ignore the entire debate. So, we heard repeatedly about all of these terrible things, the Soviet Union, Cuba, Vietnam. Other people were like, oh, it's example tennis. Again, it really is example tennis. You could literally spend years listing dozens of examples on either side about how, Cuba's really terrible. And to be honest, I doubt that there's that many people here who are going to stand up and defend, famines in Ukraine under Stalin and say, well, it really was necessary for, the implementation of socialism. But at the same time, you can also stand up and talk about, man-made famines in capitalist Africa. I mean, I'm not going to completely, say the capitalism is utterly irredeemable because of these terrible things that have happened, because you need to engage with the principles behind a system rather than just listing a bunch of random factoids that don't really relate directly to what you're talking about. So to come back to it, the fundamental argument that I believe, and I think most people probably should believe, is that democracy is a good thing. I think that more people making decisions about things is a good thing. I think that a large group of people make better decisions than a single person or a small group of people. So I think if you could have an economic system which allows large groups of people to make decisions about their own lives, their own livelihoods, that is a good thing. That is why I support socialism.
That is why I think the workers probably know what's better for a company or for a factory or even for a hospital, or, for example, the local community in the case of particular things like hospitals, than random people who happen to own those things and run them for the purpose purely of having profit. That, again, is why I think socialism is a good thing. Also, just to be clear, you can have markets under socialism. Again, this is something we repeatedly heard about, like, oh, prices and efficiency and all these great developments. You can still have money and markets under socialism. The real question here is who owns the things that are doing this? What is the purpose of what these things are being run for? And I think the fundamental purpose of them should be for the greater good of the greatest possible number of people. I guess kind of the last little thing that I want to note, free markets don't really exist. The state needs to ensure that they exist. Also, I think it's pretty disgraceful to act as though there isn't coercion under capitalism. You know, when you have people lying in the street because of the fact that they are incapable, perhaps, of getting a job, and we've just decided, you know, we should leave them there to freeze to death in the cold, but it's not coercion because the government isn't doing it to you. So, you know, it's perfectly all right because this is what happens under capitalism. Oh, sorry, oh no, your benefits have run out, you don't have a job. Looks like you're going to starve to death, but hey, listen, it's not the government doing it with a gun, so it's perfectly all right according to the people on this side of the house. I, on the other hand, think that as a whole, and this is something that, again, people did say on this side of the debate, and I really do agree with, we're better off working together as a group, as a society, as a community, both in our economy, both in our democracy, and that is why I beg to propose. Thank you very much.
Right, well, we've had a very robust debate on the motion. I'm now going to put the question to the House. This House supports socialism. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against?
Show of hands, probably.
Show of hands.
I think maybe we should have a show of hands. Okay. All those who support socialism. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Oh shit, they win. Quite resounding.
They're just really bad at talking.
It's almost as they know how to work together as a collective.
Are we doing names now? This is actually real close.
Please be a dead tie, that would class.
31.
Get wrecked!
And that was the end of the argument.
Okay, so this motion is defeated. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to come back and chair a meeting of the HIST. I have chaired the HIST on a number of occasions. The first time was 45 years ago, when there was a man called Jonathan Guinness who was invited to speak, and a lot of people felt that he was fascist, and they didn't want to listen to him. So I was a young lecturer in economics at the time, and I was put in a chair in a very, very difficult meeting. And things had calmed down towards the end of the meeting when the door there burst open and two young gentlemen from UCD, one who is now a senator, Senator McDougall, and the other who unfortunately died this year, a judge of the Supreme Court. The two of them were here and they wanted to break up the meeting. So unfortunately, I had to call quarters and have them ejected from the meeting. So that was my first experience of the HIST, although I've met many speakers from the HIST because I debated for the LMH in UCD in my early days. Right, I'm not going to talk about the individual speakers tonight. I think the debate, as I said, was very robust and a lot of people made very interesting contributions. As an economist, I was intrigued by three names that were sort of mentioned here this evening. One was indirectly mentioned, the Road to Serfdom, which was written by Friedrich von Hayek. Milton Friedman was second who was mentioned, and the third was Karl Marx. Now, I met Friedrich von Hayek in Dublin, and I found him an intriguing man. I think anybody who hasn't read the Road to certainly should certainly go and consult it. I met Milton Friedman in California in the Hoover Institute, and I found it absolutely intriguing. And I think if you want to see sort of probably Friedman's greatest contribution to economics, you should read The Monetary History of the United States, which is about that thick. Which he co-authored with Anna Schwartz. That was the book that inspired Ben Bernanke. And Ben Bernanke is one of the people who I think was most responsible for getting the world out of the great financial crisis that was experienced in 2008 and 2009. So I think both Friedman and Hayek are worth looking at in fairly significant depth. The third author, Karl Marx, I didn't have the opportunity to meet him because I'm not of a sufficient age to have met Marx, but I think his writing of Das Kapital is perhaps one of the great disasters for economics. Let me explain why. Essentially, you could reduce the Das Kapital to the following. Marx produced a socio-economic stratification of society, saying basically you have workers and you have capitalists. And that the workers work at the iron law of wages, and the capitalists appropriate the surplus product of labour. So the workers are the brave, courageous individuals, and the capitalists are the nasty lecturers on society who take this surplus product. So from this he developed his theory of exploitation and came up with the recommendation that you get rid of capitalists. Now I think that socio-economic stratification, which has passed muster with economists, both in the right and the left, is perhaps not the most appropriate one. And there is an Irish economist who provided an alternative. And this Irish economist, most of you have never heard mention of him. His name is Richard Cancelon, or in France, if they talk about him, they know him a great deal more than in Ireland, Richard Cancelon. And he wrote a work in the 1720s called the Essai sur la nature du commerce en général, which was subsequently translated as the Essay on the Nature of Trade in General. And Cancelon, rather than producing the Marxian socio-economic stratification, remember he was writing 120 years before Marx, he produced a remarkable classification. He said basically in society you have people who work for fixed wages and you have entrepreneurs. And he gave a remarkable definition of the entrepreneur. He said the entrepreneur is somebody who buys at a known price to sell at an unknown price. And I think that's probably the best one-line definition of the entrepreneur around. And he showed that you can have mobility between these two groups, between the people on fixed wages and the entrepreneurs. The taxi driver entrepreneur can become the bus driver working on fixed wage tomorrow. And if you have that type of classification of society as an institution where you have people working on fixed wages and entrepreneurs, you get rid of all of the tension and the hatred and the class conflict and the class animosity that is inherent in Marxian economics and in Marxian sociology. And I think if we do that, we come up with a far more interesting society. As I look around Dublin, Ottawa, or in Cork, or Galway, Limerick, you have people who are working on fixed wages and entrepreneurs. And many of the people who worked on fixed wages yesterday are the entrepreneurs of today or tomorrow. So I think you should go back and have a look at an Irish economist who's written on these issues, Paul Richard Cancelon, writing in the 1720s onwards. So they would be my sort of comments with respect to people that you might like to consult in terms of economics. My other comment would be that I recently travelled to Vietnam and Cambodia. And I think it's worthwhile for everybody in a way to go out and have a look at these societies. Because as we know, in 1975, the Viet Cong essentially pushed the Americans out of Vietnam. And the North Vietnamese came south, and then they posed a socialist approach, you could say perhaps it's extreme socialism, but it was socialism. And the socialist approach was to have collectivization in Vietnam, which had been self-sufficient in rice, within 5 years was running short of rice and had to import it. Vietnam, that had a very private agricultural sector, suddenly found itself close to famine. And indeed, the former Viet Cong leaders realized that something had gone wrong with the collectivization approach. And gradually, they allowed markets to be introduced into Vietnam. And now if you travel around Vietnam, you see it's essentially a market-based economy. And it's an economy which is extraordinarily dynamic. The people there, all they want to do is work every hour of the day and go out and sell their products. To such a point that Vietnam is now a major exporter of rice across the global economy. Vietnam has become a major hub for a whole range of industries, and not just sort of low-grade textile work, but into high-tech stuff too. And the economy, with 94 million people, is moving ahead at a very, very fast pace. The second country I visited was Cambodia. And Cambodia, unfortunately, also suffered from the great collectivization. Pol Pot, following Mao, who of course had introduced the disastrous collectivization in China, under the name of the Cultural Revolution. People have talked about culture, about socialism introducing culture into society. Well, believe me, the Cultural Revolution was anything but the Cultural Revolution. It resulted in the destruction of a whole range of very precious institutions, customs in Chinese society. Collectivization in Cambodia, what did it lead to? It led to the Khmer Rouge coming in and destroying Cambodian society. 2 million people killed, we've all seen probably killed. And that's symptomatic of what went on. Population 7 or 8 million people, and 2 million people killed. Why? Because Pol Pot had this mad idea that people shouldn't be working in the cities, they should all be out working in the land, and that's where we got the surplus product from. We got plenty of surplus product growing rice. Of course, what happened was they pushed the people from the city onto the land, killing them in the process, and then suddenly they basically discovered that these people were incapable of growing rice, and the farmers who found the new people imposed upon them weren't incentivized to produce rice. So Cambodia ended up as an absolute disaster area for collectivization. And just to finish off, I was very struck talking to an old man there who had worked as a civil servant in Cambodia prior to the Khmer Rouge. And when the Khmer Rouge came into power, he was an obvious target for them. They caught you, they would torture you, crucify you, and kill you. That was basically the 3 phases of them destroying the intelligentsia of Cambodia. And I asked him, how did he survive through 5 years of absolute terror? He said, I did two things. He said, I took off my glasses and threw them away, because if you're found wearing glasses, you're regarded as an intellectual and you're going to be killed. And having done that, he said, I looked stupid. And I looked stupid for 5 years. And that's the only way that I survived. So I think you need to be careful when you're talking about some of the glories of socialism. Just think about that gentleman and how he had to survive through the regime of Pol Pot, through this exercise in collectivization. It may be a good piece of advice if you get yourselves caught up in some country when they're trying this type of experiment. But certainly, Asia has shown, through the Cultural Revolution in China, through what happened in Vietnam, through what happened in Cambodia, and many other countries, that you need to be very, very careful about destroying markets and trying to impose on these former market-style economies socialist collectivization. So, thank you.
Hey, well, I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening. Also, I'd like to thank everyone for chairing this debate. Just a few announcements. So, firstly, Nick Clegg, former Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, will be coming to speak to the HIS next Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. That evening, rather than a debate, we'll be doing our AGM, where we transfer over power to the new committee. It's a big event. Everyone leaving gets to give a speech again. All that kind of stuff. It's going to be really fun. And now we'd like to know who might potentially be on next year's committee. So what's going to happen is that Meg, our secretary, is going to read out the list of nominees for all the positions, and at the end of that, we're going to ask one final time if anyone would like to put their names forward for positions. And when everyone has put their names forward, we're then going to close nominations. I'd ask that rather than clapping after each name is called out, you do a singular clap. And we'll get through this much faster because it's already quite late in the evening. So Meg, kick us off.
Okay, so the nominees for ordinary member of committee are, there's a lot of them, as we'd hoped, Sarah McGuinness, Elizabeth Younger, Catherine Kelly, Luke Fehely, Cian McLaughlin, Niall Mayer, Celine Delahoy, Conor O'Malley, Anya Corey, Ellen Summers, Liam Smith, Keir Sinan, Afric Doherty, Sam Barron, Maeve Gyron, Claire Elwell, Conal Tow, Micheál Ganley, Hannah Sophia Kirsten, Scott Byrne, Ataun Sweeney, and Rian Fitzsimmons.
Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else on the floor?
Is there anyone else who wants to nominate themselves for ordinary member of committee? Con, this is your chance. Next year?
Sinead.
I'd like to nominate Sinead Harrington.
Sinead Harrington Sweeney, would you like to be nominated?
I second Meg Bear.
You've known me for 6 years and you can't pronounce my name right. Yeah, sorry, okay. Okay, so nominations have now closed for MC. Nominations for senior member of committee. Rian Fitzsimmons and Claire Elwell. Is there anyone else who would like to nominate themselves for senior member of committee? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Julian McCarthy.
We're not taking any joke nominations. Yeah? Okay. Nominations for senior member of committee have closed. Nominations for events convener. Kevin Smith. Is there anyone else who would like to nominate themselves as events convener? No?
Then you can declare war, as in Rona can declare.
That makes Kevin Smith events convener elect.
As much as we'd like to give standing ovations for everyone who is deep elected, we really do have to move through these people quite quickly. So I'd ask just a brief round of applause after each one.
We have to get to the wine. Okay. Nominees for debates convener. Julie Davis. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves for debates convener?
One more year. No.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Julie Davis is deemed Nominations for librarian. Jake Trant. Liam Smith. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves for librarian? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Right, okay, no one's elected for that. Okay. Nominations, well, we should probably applaud it. Nominees for centre. Tigran Simonian. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves for centre? Hilarious, but
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Team Experiment is team centre-elect. Okay. Nominees for Record Secretary: Dermot Davern, Catherine Kelly. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves for Record Secretary of the 248th session? It's a great job. I would highly recommend it. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
All right, move on then, yeah.
Okay. Nomination for the Correspondence Secretary. Obviously the second best secretarial position, but it's not a shame, it's a fact. Thank you.
Come on.
Shabani Karmakar. Kayleen Newcomb. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves for the second best secretarial position? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. The nominees for Treasurer: Eamon Sweeney Harrington. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves for the position of Treasurer?
I reject that nomination.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. Eamon Sweeney Nominations for Auditor of the 248th session: Jack Kennedy. Lads, come on, we ran through that. Ruth Lennon. Paul Malloy. Would anyone else like to nominate themselves for auditor?
I'd like to nominate Rory O'Sullivan, and if anyone has any questions, they can find the answers in his manifesto.
I would like to nominate Luke Taylor Renane.
Seconded.
Okay. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. Best of luck to everyone running. For further information, see the electoral subcommittee.
Yeah, so the election will be held on Monday. All information about that will be sent out in a weekly email. You can find it on Facebook. Just to say, we have a reception upstairs with wine and food. We're going at the Longstone pub afterwards, and after that we'll be going to Workman's.
Wow.
And also, I point you to the oratory
Hustings manifesto.
Hustings will be held tomorrow. We congratulate all officers winning.
What time?
3:10.
Guys, also the officers.
Ollie, shut up.
Just leave it, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to hand over to the chair now to adjourn this meeting.
This should all definitely be moved away from here.
Yeah, we'll probably have like a handover meeting sometime next week, okay? After the election.
Yeah, that's